So I don't look at my portfolio very often. Today I was looking at my top 10 or 12 stocks, and one stock really stood out. One that I haven't owned for that long. I mean, I've owned it since the IPO and I've been adding to it, but in comparison to a lot of my other stocks like Microsoft since 2012, NVDA since 2018, and so on, the majority of my top holdings are bagger stocks. Now, one stock sticks out that doesn't really fit in that list, and it was a new IPO during the whole pandemic craze, and that is Snowflake. You know, Snowflake, at this point, I am up on it. I'm up maybe 15%, and I've been bullish on this company, maybe to a fault. You know, I bought it probably a little bit sooner than I should have, and I kept adding and adding and adding, but my conviction was there. And that's the thing about, you know, when you're investing in the stock market, it's about having conviction and understanding in what you're buying. And so I've always had high conviction on Snowflake. In fact, we covered Snowflake on this channel before the IPO, the very first YouTube channel to cover Snowflake. And I'll be honest with you, it reminds me a lot of back in 2018. I went long on NVIDIA in the 30s. You know the whole story. And that stock was one where I saw a pivot. I saw a pivot more to data center and AI as a possibility. That was more of a moonshot at that point, but they were starting to get more into data center, and there were a lot of opportunities on the enterprise side. Now, looking back 2012, I got into Microsoft for the same reason when I saw Microsoft Azure start to take off, because of in my job, in my work, I started to see Azure compete against AWS. Now, Snowflake is a little bit unique in the sense that a lot of people knew about the company or invested in it. They didn't maybe know what Snowflake did, but because of the whole IPO craze, a lot of people got excited about Snowflake. If it weren't for the pandemic and the company had gone public, it might be a completely different story, because I think the stock wouldn't have come to market, IPO to retail as high as it did. So let's look at Snowflake. Let me share why I'm so bullish about this company long term. Okay, so if you follow Snowflake, you know about data cloud. Now, this is the journey here. So on-prem. So this was on-prem at one point and really evolved into what is now called the data cloud. So you can see from on-prem to data lakehouse. And on this video, I'm trying to focus on really what's important to explain this company as simply as I possibly can, because I have an entire playlist on Snowflake. I go into the weeds, and a lot of people just maybe aren't interested, or they get lost. Some of you really eat it up, others don't. I'm going to try to stay as high level as I can here. So this is about data, and it's about managing and structuring data. Think of proprietary data for enterprise, but also data that you can share with other organizations. So this is right from Snowflake's website, the Data Cloud Explained. The Data Cloud is a global network that connects organizations to the data and applications most critical to their business. Enables a wide range of possibilities, from breaking down silos within an organization to collaborating over content with partners and customers, even integrating external data and applications for fresh insights. Now, data is one of the most valuable assets in the world. When you think about these large corporations, we talk about enterprise business, a lot of that information is siloed. So you think about a company that's maybe, 30, 40, 50 years old. It's really hard for those companies because they have very siloed structure and team. They've got disparate data and systems all over. It's hard to really have that data communicate, and you have to have all the data and good data to get meaningful results from it. So Snowflake has what's called the Snowflake Marketplace, and we've talked about partnerships with companies like the Trade Desk. Simplifies the sharing, collaborating, and monetizing of thousands of data set services and entire data applications. This creates the active and growing data cloud. So Snowflake is going to eliminate data silos. It's going to structure the data, put it in a format that's consumable by really anybody within the organization. And that data is very powerful to make better decisions, be more effective, be more efficient. This is a good slide to kind of give you a snapshot. So cloud services on that top, right? And then you've got all the optimized storage. So unstructured and semi-structured data, both in the middle there. And that allows metadata sharing and collaboration, performance optimization, management, analytics, and more. This is big, and it's going to start building up to really the punchline of this video. So the marketplace, the data and applications on the top. Look at workloads there. You've got cybersecurity. When you think of secular growth trends, things that you want to invest in for the next 5 and 10 years, and you want to capture those gains within those momentum, within those mega trends. Cybersecurity. Look on the left-hand side. AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. So you've got governed collaboration. So governed means you can control access, permissions, who can see what data. You've got the data warehouse, the data lake, and the Unistore, data engineering in the middle, and that goes up to the workloads. If you think about what Snowflake has done, it's pretty amazing considering, Redshift from Amazon, Google, a lot of the big players really were in the space before Snowflake trying to do the same thing. They're just doing it better. And Frank Slootman and Mike Scarpelli, CEO and CFO, they're the dynamic duo. We call them the Batman and Robin. When you think of software, I mean, they have been around the block, like ServiceNow most recently. Everywhere they've gone, everything's really turned to gold. They've done a great job. And a lot of people want to work for people like Frank Slootman. When you think of sales teams, we had a platinum call recently, and there's a member in our group that's been in software sales close to 20 years. And we talked about this exact fact here that, if you're a salesperson and you can really go anywhere and you're really good at your craft. So software sales is strategic selling. Oftentimes you need, master's or MBA just to get a job, just to have an opportunity. Those aren't just any ordinary sales jobs. You might make 150, 200,000, maybe even more on a base salary plus commission. This is what I did before I started doing this. Basically, I'm semi-retired and I'm making YouTube videos trying to help you be successful, be a better investor. But we talked to this member on that platinum call and he agrees with what I'm saying here. If I'm one of the best salespeople in the world, I want to work for the best sales teams in the world. And think about sales-driven organizations. Frank Slootman is a great business person. He knows how to partner. He knows how to sell. And people just want to work for him. They want to be around him. And that is huge for me as an investor, that leadership, that management, that culture, that top-down approach when you think of a sales-driven organization. But when you think about the data cloud, this is April 2020. Look at the growth in data cloud. Look at that growth in basically three and a half years from April 2020 to October 2023. That is staggering. There's so many partners in the ecosystem that you can barely even see my camera up here. I have to make it that small because there's so many on here. I mean, you've got companies like Accenture, so all of the big consulting firms and the big three, but you've got like the Capgeminis, you've got even IBM, ADP, Amazon's going to be a partner, Google's going to be a partner, Microsoft's going to be a partner. And I saw an article recently, the author said, Snowflake's basically like the Switzerland of data. In other words, they get along with everybody. They're kind of neutral. They partner with everybody. Empowered by thousands of customers. This is just a handful here. You can see, DoorDash, Cisco, AT&T, Honeywell, Novartis, Roku, Square, Experian, and so on. Now, this is one of the big reasons I'm so bullish about Snowflake longer term. And the story is going to take some time. So this is really a long-term investment, in my opinion, holding it 3 or more years. So they focus on product revenue and RPO, remaining performance obligation. So number 1, you're going to book. Number 2, you're going to bill. Number 3, customers draw down from bookings as they consume. This is about consumption. And then 4, consumption patterns dictate future bookings. So that can be a little bit confusing, especially if you're not used to this type of a system and you're trying to invest in the stock. So it's a consumption model. So people need to consume data for Snowflake to make more money. So this is going to have a little bit of cyclicality. Of course, when you see a recession, you see a slowdown, people are going to probably use it less. If you've got layoffs, more unemployment, things like that. So it will have some seasonality, maybe some cyclicality, especially with certain customers, but their consumption model. So pros, enables faster growth, aligned with customer value, aligned with usage-based costs. Revenue is variable based on customers' usage. So customers don't pay for shelfware. In other words, if they're not using it, they don't have to pay for it. Now, there are pros and cons of this as a business. You can see where you could spin it as a salesperson to a board, an executive team, say, hey, you're only going to pay us if you're using it. If you're using it, you're going to have extreme value out of it. So why pay for like software as a service where you're paying a bunch of money whether you use it or not? Our consumption model is better. But this is where I think the leadership is genius. And it's going to take time for this to unfold. But let's just think about this from simplistic terms. When you get your iPhone, maybe that first iPhone you had 8 gigabytes or 16 gigabytes. You think, I'll never use all that. And then all of a sudden, a couple years later, you're full and you have no room to take pictures. The next one's 32 gigs and you think, wow, I have 32 gigs. I'll never use it all. Or a computer, it's got 1 terabyte. Remember the first time you had terabyte and you thought, I'm never going to need more than a terabyte. And now you have 4 terabytes and you're thinking, man, I need to pay Apple $2,000 so I can get 8 terabytes, which is a complete ripoff, but a different story. So as technology evolves, more data is consumed and files are larger and things like that. Now, what's the big topic here that we've been talking about? Talk about generative AI and how it applies really in the enterprise space. So when you think of generative AI, you want to invest in kind of the pick and shovel and the platforms. So platforms like AWS, mechanisms, delivery mechanisms where they can roll out this technology, this software to enterprises on a large scale. So we're talking about thousands of employees at a time. So you think of like Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Platform. It's going to be a lot better as an investor to sell to enterprise and sell thousands of licenses at once versus one consumer paying 20 or 30 bucks a month for something like a chatbot. Well, AI is going to take extreme amounts of data. These LLMs take extreme amounts of data. The more data, the more consumption, the more money that Snowflake is going to make. This is the earnings transcript from the most recent Snowflake earnings report, and this is from Frank Slootman. This is a quote right here. Generative AI is at the forefront of customer conversations, which in turn drives renewed emphasis on data strategy and preparation of these new technologies. When you think about AI, you think of LLMs, the old rule, garbage in, garbage out. You need to have data and good data, structured data. And Snowflake's going to help you take that data, mine that data, get into a repository that's usable for things like AI tools, generative AI. We said it many times. There's no AI strategy without a data strategy. Reiterating what I'm saying right there, the intelligence we're all aiming for results in the data, hence the quality of that underpinning is critical. The quality of the data is critical. Snowflake is going to help make that happen. Meanwhile, Snowflake has announced and showcased a plethora of new technologies that let customers mobilize AI. So they introduced Cortex. That's to leverage AI and machine learning on Snowflake. Cortex is a managed service for large language models, LLMs. This opens up direct access to models and specialized operations by translation, sentiment, and vector functions. So business analysts and data engineers can now use AI functionality without the fractured, highly technical challenges of the AI landscape. Last summer, we introduced Snowpark Container Services. Talk about that. And this serves as their second pillar of their AI enablement strategy. Developers can access any language, any library, and flexible hardware inside the government's boundary of Snowflake. More than 70 customers already using it. And we covered this on the channel. And I shared a conversation between Frank Slootman, CEO of Snowflake, and Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA. Snowflake and NVIDIA team to help businesses harness their data for generative AI and the data cloud. These are two of my favorite companies, and I love it when companies like this collaborate. So NVIDIA Nemo, we've talked about this, and this is a subscription service. This is where NVIDIA is getting more into software as a service and SaaS. It's a platform for developing large language models and NVIDIA GPU accelerated computing. Snowflake will enable enterprises to use data in their Snowflake accounts to make custom LLMs for advanced generative AI services, including chatbots, search, summarization, and more. The ability to customize LLMs without moving data enables proprietary information to be fully secured and governed within the Snowflake platform. This is huge. So NVIDIA powered with Snowflake, and Snowflake already houses the data, has that governance and compliance. Those two companies together, that's a powerful solution. This is from Jensen Huang. Data is essential for creating generative AI applications that understand the complex operations and unique voice of every company. Together, NVIDIA and Snowflake will create an AI factory that helps enterprises turn their own valuable data into custom generative AI models to power groundbreaking new applications right from the cloud platform that they use to run their business. They're already using Snowflake in a lot of cases. It's more of a plug and play type of a scenario here. Something interesting here that Slootman said on the earnings call, he said 28% of all of our customers share data, up from 22% a year ago, and 73% of our $1 million plus customers are sharing data, and that's up from 67% a year ago. So more and more companies are becoming comfortable with sharing data, and this is going to create opportunity as well. So in a nutshell, we talk about semiconductors are the new oil. A lot of people say data is the new oil. Thing is, data needs semiconductors to work, and you saw right here, NVIDIA partnering with Snowflake. But both of these are very powerful secular trends. You think of semiconductors, GPUs, processing power, you think of data, and Snowflake is going to benefit for many reasons. It's already doing really well even before the AI craze, but this is really going to dump rocket fuel on their growth opportunity and their TAM. Now, it's not going to happen right away. This is going to take time. These sales cycles, definitely aren't short, and it's going to take time for customers to ramp up and then to start consuming data. So you might not see results in this right away, but I look, a couple years out, and I think you'll see some very strong numbers from Snowflake. And the thing about it too is that Snowflake, as I mentioned earlier, it partners with really everybody. So, you could be working with Amazon and Snowflake and NVIDIA all together. And this is why I love owning these companies as cores in my portfolio. They're focused on enterprise. They partner together sometimes they compete. And we talked about this in Discord recently. In the software land, oftentimes companies will compete and they'll also partner. And there are different teams and groups, within these companies that are focused on different things. But Snowflake really, like I said earlier, the Switzerland of software. And Slootman gets along with everybody, has great partner relationships. They moved their headquarters to Bozeman, Montana, but he's still very rooted in Silicon Valley. He hasn't alienated himself like some of the other CEOs that we know. So the question you have, is the stock a buy now or not? I'm going to look at just real quick fundamentals and tell you my take on that. We'll also look at a chart here after this, so stay tuned for that. So right now, and this is on Seeking Alpha, it's showing a PE, a forward P ratio of 252. Now, of course, that's not cheap, but generally speaking, these kind of companies, you're not using a PE ratio, and even PE ratios in general, you shouldn't overemphasize, but it's good to at least have the idea and to know that, future or forward PE is going to show profitability. Short interest is 3.31%. Market cap is about $65.5 billion. And we'll look at a more detailed chart later, but just to give you an idea, year to date, Snowflake up about 47%, S&P 500 is up about 24%. So this is on Seeking Alpha. And again, we're probably not going to use PE ratio to look at valuation. It's good to know that there is at least a PE ratio profitability here. But generally at these type of stocks, we look at what we call EV NTM revenue. So the EV NTM revenue in Snowflake is around 20x. So it's basically the most expensive stock in that cloud universe. Now the free cash flow is around 25% and the metrics have improved quite a bit. So if you look 2 years ago, you didn't see any profitability, any kind of valuation numbers like this at all. So we talk about the evolution, from spec to hypergrowth, growth, mature growth, and so on. This company has matured over the last couple of years. And the thing that's interesting about it is a couple of years ago, you might have paid this price for the stock and the numbers weren't nearly as strong. Now that growth maybe has slowed down and part of that's because it's consumption based, like I mentioned earlier. You look at growth, it's still really strong, 40%, revenue growth forward, 43%. But at one point, this was growing at 100%. So that growth is starting to slow down, but you're seeing profitability. And this is where it gets interesting, just like with CrowdStrike and a few other names we've covered recently. So they have a ways to go still, profitability. They've got gross profit margin positive 67%, but things like EBITDA margin still negative and so on. This company is still trying to focus on growth. It's still expanding that footprint. And so you saw recently here last night, another acquisition, some M&A. And this was just posted in Discord last night, December 18th. Snowflake announces agreement to acquire Samua. I think that's how you say it anyway. So this is about data clean rooms. And they've been adopted quickly by media and entertainment companies as a way to provide personalized experiences and services for their customers, especially given evolving technology, regulatory, privacy context, and so on. This is going back to that data cloud that we talk about and the data sharing. Make it easy to build data clean rooms that run as Snowflake native apps in the data cloud. And then we can also look at price to sales. And it's roughly 24, depending on where you look here, 24.44, 24.73. Now that's astronomical. It's very expensive, even for this type of a company. When you think of software related company, it's tough because it's not SaaS. And a lot of times with software as a service, we talk about that recurring revenue. And it's a lot better for investors because those companies aren't having to go to bat every single quarter and find new business. Snowflake is consumption based, so it's going to have some cyclicality. But I think that consumption base is actually smart in the longer run when you think about what we talked about earlier. So this is a very expensive stock. I'll show you a chart here next and tell you where I think it could go and what I might do. Okay, so anytime you see orange, that's a previous chart day. Yellow is most recent chart day. This is from last Wednesday. If you want to join us in chart day, we do that live every single Wednesday. Patreon Discord. You can check us out. Go to patreon.com/firedupwealth. So just on Wednesday, we said, good earnings, monster rip, 173 support, watch for 205. You probably see some resistance around 200, I think I said, but this R2 is 205. We didn't get quite there. Like $200 might be that psychological number it has to break past. Now, one thing I want to say, because some of you are probably coming into this video and didn't watch the whole thing, I recommend that you watch the entire video. I think you'll learn a lot about Snowflake. And I can't cover everything in just a short video like this. There's an entire playlist, so go check it out. I tried to make a quick video that gave you an overview and also shared some ideas here. Now, what I want to tell you is that I've been bullish on this stock, good, bad, ugly, and different, because I have high conviction in the company. It's very expensive. It's always been expensive. It's going to continue to be expensive. A lot of people watching this, maybe you just don't buy buy it. You might just avoid it because it doesn't make any sense. If you're a value investor and you're trying to use a PE ratio, this is not the right stock for you. And if you don't completely understand this, maybe you don't work in this field or you don't have a good understanding of just software, enterprise software, you might want to avoid it. Or if you invest in something like Snowflake, consider it speculative because it is very expensive and there are risks to consider. Now, with that said, I have high conviction. It's one of my top holdings. I worked in that space and I'm confident. I have conviction that the company is going to do well, but it's a very long-term hold for me. I'm planning on holding it for 5 or more years unless the story changes. So my point of hold this is I was telling people, it gets $150 or less DCA. We've talked about it many times, DCA $150 or less and hold it for the next 5 years. So anytime this gets below $150, I think it's a DCA opportunity. Of course, I'm not a financial advisor. I can't tell you what to do with your money. You got to do what's best for you. So is it a buy at $200? I prefer $150 or less DCA. Of course, that's not that helpful because it's over that. But you look at this Fibonacci retracement, it's above that. It's coming up this R2. R3 is all the way up there at $228. That is a possibility. It won't happen overnight. So I think by this time next year, this stock is probably going to be higher. Maybe it's 230 to 250, but the risk reward just might not be there at this price. So you have to make that decision for yourself. Now, if you're going to periodically DCA, you're going to buy a little bit every paycheck. Then you have to look at it. If you have the right mindset, it fits your blueprint, it makes sense for your portfolio. That might be a good opportunity for you just to nibble in. I think the stock will go higher, but it's not a cheap stock and I prefer it $150 or less. But a lot of people have been asking me about Snowflake, why it's a top position, why I'm so bullish. And here are the reasons why. It reminds me a lot. Again, I said it earlier, NVDA in 2018, I could see Snowflake being big in a few years once people start to kind of figure that story out. Analysts didn't have NVIDIA right for years. I mean, just a year ago, no one wanted to buy NVIDIA. It was, under $125. We said pound the table on 150. It gets to 125, pound the table. It's even cheaper. This is one that I see, a high quality name that I think has potential to do something like NVIDIA did where it could have a big rip, but it might take several years for that to happen. And I don't want you to watch this video and go buy it just because of me. I'm just sharing my opinion. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel, click that bell for notifications. If this video is helpful, drop me a like, drop me a comment. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.